the life and times of Sister Faustina, the Apostle of Divine Mercy. Father Seraphim Mikolenko is a member of the Congregation of Marian Fathers of the Immaculate Conception of the Blessed Virgin Mary. He was appointed in 1981 as the Vice Postulator for the cause of the beatification of Sister Faustina for North America. He's been working on the project now for 8 years, the last 3 of which he spent in Rome. We spoke to him about Sister Faustina and the devotion to the Divine Mercy on the balcony outside his study in Rome. Father Mikolenko, you're here in Rome promoting the cause of the beatification of Sister Faustina, a Polish nun who died in 1938. Perhaps you could fill us in with the beginning of her story.
From her earliest years, she felt a special calling to follow the ways of the Lord. Even as a little girl, she claims that angels were getting her up to pray, and her mother said she'd go crazy unless she slept. Her father used to read stories of monks and hermits when she was a little girl, and she was convinced that one day she's going to be like one of them.
She was born Helen Kowalska in central Poland in 1905, the third of 10 children. Her parents, of humble farming stock, were born and lived all their lives in the middle of Poland, in a little village not far from the market town of Łódź.
Głogowiec, a little village, part of a larger one called Świnice, a very old settlement here in the heart of Poland. It was here in this house that on August the 25th, 1905, a little girl came into the world named Helena Kowalska, later to be known as Sister Mary Faustina of the Most Blessed Sacrament, when she entered the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy in Warsaw. The room at the farthest part of the house is where she was actually born. Let us go inside and see the Kowalski homestead. In this principal room of the Kowalski cottage, 10 children came into the world, the third of which was Helena, the future Sister Faustina. The bed stood in this corner. It was here that Helena saw the light of day in order to bring light to all who would hear the message that the Lord chose her to spread later on. That little window there is where, in the evenings, Faustina would leave unlatched so that she could go out without bothering anyone else and feed the cows so that she could go to church on Sunday. The parish church of Świnice, St. Casimir's. It was in this church that Sister Faustina was baptized and made a child of God 2 days after her birth. It was here that she made her first communion and her first confession, and here that she loved to come to pray any moment she could. Anytime her chores allowed her to, she ran to the church. She also visited here when, one time in her life, she came back home to visit her ailing mother. And while she prayed here in this church with her brother, she writes about it in this way. How easy it was to pray in that little church. I remembered all the graces that I had received there, and which I had not understood at the time and had so often abused. I wondered how I could have been so blind. And as I was thus regretting my blindness, I suddenly saw the Lord Jesus radiant with unspeakable beauty, and he said to me with kindness, "My chosen one, I will give you even greater graces, that you may be the witness of my infinite mercy throughout all eternity." As she got older, She went to work for various families in the nearby cities, and the call became more intense, but her parents would not hear at all of her vocation or going to the convent. So she tried to give it all up, and one day at a dance with her sister, she happened to have a vision of the suffering Christ who said, "How long am I going to wait for you?" And in response, she left the dance, went into the closest church, the cathedral, and prostrated before the Blessed Sacrament and asked the Lord, "What would you have me do?" And she heard a voice within her telling her, "Go to Warsaw, there you will enter a convent." She did just that, and immediately that evening left for Warsaw.
Her uncle took her to the train station where she waited alone for her train to Warsaw. Coming from a poor family, she had only the set of clothes that she was wearing. As the train approached, she was courageous, eager to set off on the journey the Lord had asked her to take. On boarding the train, she became sorrowful, knowing her action would hurt her parents. But she felt even more deeply the need to be obedient to Him whom she'd come to love so much, ever since she was a child of 7. But putting her trust in Our Lady, she arrived in Warsaw, but wondered what to do and where to go. She knew no one there. But she found her way to the Church of St. James, where in her dejection she prayed to the Mother of God. "Mary, lead me, guide me," she prayed. Then she went to the sacristy, told the priest all that had transpired in her soul, and asked him to advise her as to which convent to enter. Helen began to try one convent after another, but she had many refusals. But on May the 1st, 1924, she knocked on the door of the convent of the Sisters of Our Lady of Mercy in Warsaw. The Mother Superior at first declined to interview her, but then, changing her mind, told her to go to the Lord of the house and ask whether he would accept her.
"Lord and Master of this house, do you accept me?"
And the Lord replied, "I do accept you. You are in my heart." When she returned, the Mother Superior asked whether the Lord had accepted her. "Yes," she replied. "Then I will accept you also," she said.
This plaque near the former gateway to the Mother House of the Congregation of Our Lady of Mercy tells us that it was here that 19-year-old Helena Kowalska entered the community in 1925. And it was precisely near this entrance that there was an exit from the corridor which Sister Faustina mentions in her diary as having seen in a vision. There she was called by a voice from the chapel nearby to come and take her place in the altar with the Lord. And as she passed through the pathway to this external chapel, she was greeted with the taunts and stones and sand and sticks of many people that she knew who speeded up her way to the altar by their treatment of her. And there it happened that the very same people who threw all these various things upon her